And we had several requests for this session over the last couple years of folks that wanted to demystify what does it look like to be a person of color and to proceed onto corporate boards. And so we're looking forward to this panel. Before we do that, I want to invite one of our colleagues, a fellow here as well, from the state of Ohio, the Department of Development, Minority Business Division, Ms. Monica Womack, who came on as a leadership level sponsor, but also a recent fellow in the 2024 class, who also completed our program, who's going to bring remarks on behalf of the state.
Good afternoon. Again, as most shared, I'm Monica Womack. I'm an alum of Cohort 22. Double deuce? Yes. So, again, thank you to AALA overall. The membership and the fellowship, the partnership, the family that is here. I did not attend an HBCU, but seeing everyone in the room, it was like, okay, let me connect. I haven't seen you, and how do we continue to maintain that connection? The Department of Development, specifically the Minority Business Division, is intentional in helping entrepreneurship and really being able to use that as that pathway to living your life by design and not by default. And so I just want to thank Donna, Larry, Audra, Mo, for all of the great things that are being instilled in us that we're able to provide and instill in our community. So again, this is an amazing panel. Barb is a dear friend, so congratulations to all the work that you do and the work that we're doing to continue to be the change that we want to see. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here. First and foremost, I'd like to introduce you to the 1990 Chicago Bulls team to my left. I get the honor of being Phil Jackson, the easiest job in America. So let me set the stage real quick for some context on this subject. I'm so glad that the AALA decided to do this today. A quick statistic. Last year, about 15% of new directors were African American. This, in 2024, it dropped down 5 percentage points down to 10%. So that's a third decrease. Then in December, the US Court of Appeals actually vacated the NASDAQ ruling that required NASDAQ-listed companies to have 2 or more diverse directors on their board. So this is the context that we're dealing with in this new age. And so what we're going to do today is to talk about the importance of being on corporate boards, why this is important. And then one last statistic that kind of ties into what Carrington mentioned about NVIDIA. NVIDIA created 3 billionaires. To be specific, Tench Coates got $5.4 billion or 32 million in shares. Mark Stevens, $9.3 billion, 298th richest person in the globe. And Harvey James, $1 billion. He has 300 million in shares. So talk about the importance of developing and creating economic wealth by being on boards. So what I'd like to do now is to pivot to this distinguished panel, Yvette McGee-Brown, Gail King, and Alex Shoemake. Let's properly welcome them. Thank you. So why is it important to have this subject as part of this venue today? Why is it important for African Americans to consider corporate board service?
You notice this, Yvette turned it to me right away. All right, I mean, that's what happens to your friends. Can I do one thing? First of all, I want to say congratulations to all of you, and if you would do us a favor and give yourselves a big round of applause for being amazing. No, you're not loud enough. I don't hear you. Thank you. And the last thing, since you gave it to me, I'm going to own this. And Dwight, I really appreciate it. I don't see you, but you mentioned and you acknowledged Donna James. Those of you know that I grew up at Nationwide Insurance, and Donna James is forever and will always be a beloved friend. So congratulations, Donna, for all that you've done. One more round of applause. She doesn't like it, but we're going to give it to her. The bottom line is the reason you need to be talking about being on board service is because you need to aspire for the highest level of opportunities within corporate America. And serving as a serving on a board provides you with that opportunity to influence organizations at the highest levels. And you all are in this room today because you're on a journey to achieve all of your dreams. And you should achieve them in corporate America. You should achieve them in any entrepreneur endeavor you have or political endeavor you have. But the next and the highest level of impact is at the governance level, and that is as a corporate director. That's what I believe. Do you want to add?
Ditto. Yes. First of all, it's great to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. And I want to go through the program next year. So can I be a member of the group? This is incredible. But being on a corporate board fits into the last discussion so perfectly. Because in addition to the income and revenue that you make from your jobs, your 9-to-5s, corporate board provides you the opportunity to build your wealth, okay? I'm sitting here today, as they are, and Smucker is paying me. Think about that. Making money while you're sleeping and being on these corporate boards, and I've said so many times, and I'm sure you've experienced this, I work harder on nonprofit boards.
That's true.
So this is an opportunity to advance black folks, our agenda being on the corporate governance side, but it's also a building block to you building wealth.
So Donna James was courted early in her, towards the end of her career at Nationwide to serve on boards. She is a legacy not only in the corporate spaces as a management team member, but also in the boardroom. When's the best time in your career to start thinking about serving on boards? Is it early, later? Is there a right time? What would you recommend?
I think you should start, if you're interested, you should be thinking about it now and letting people know. I think the one thing that Dwight said is that people are watching you. And sometimes I always tell this story because people are always watching you. And I was at Nation, I was meeting with one of Gail's young mentees, and when we had lunch, she came in very casually and she had jeans on. And I said, "Oh, did you work today?" And she said, "Yeah, we get to wear jeans at Nationwide. They've allowed us to wear jeans." And I said, "Oh." I said, "What does Gail King wear?" And she paused and she said, "You're right. I've never seen Gail King in jeans, maybe on Fridays." And I said, you want to be promoted, and there are people in the company, and I'm not saying you can't get promoted if you wear jeans, but what I am saying is you've got to look like you can handle business at the highest level, and there are people paying attention to you. What Dwight said was so important. So one, you got to let people know. You've got to start developing relationships, and to Alex's points, my first public company board came because of my work on the YWCA board. I was the chair of the YWCA board. We were doing a capital campaign. I went to Bobby Schottenstein, the chairman of MI Homes, and said, we'd like you to be our lead donor for our capital campaign. And then I made it a point to meet with him as we were developing the capital campaign just to give him an update. He would invite me to lunch, and periodically over some years he said, I would really like you to be on our board. I like the way you think. I like the way that you interact with people. And that's how it starts. People are paying attention to you even when you don't think they are.
I would agree with that. People are always watching you. But I really think that you have to also know when you're ready to be on a board, too. I think it's really important that on your journey, I use myself for example. I waited until I was at a certain level where I felt I was going to be bringing something to a board. And so that is when you know in your own mind that you have a skill set and some experiences that would be a value add to an organization. And then you have to do the one thing that you have to do with everything, and that is that you have to get in the way, and Yvette talked about it. You have to speak it into existence. You have to share with people that, I'm on this journey. I want to continue to add value. I think I would like to serve on a board. What do you think? You have to put it out into the air, and because people are watching watching you and seeing your impact and your contributions, they will be helpful. There are more people who will help you than will hurt you, especially if you're operating from a pure place.
And so, Gail, you're up to like 3 or 4 boards now. How did you get your first one, and what was the timing of that?
As I said before, I felt, and I say this just as a person who, we had many board members at Nationwide, you know, I did not want somebody on the board who couldn't bring value to me, you know. So when I felt that I had reached a level that I had a level of expertise that could transfer to another organization, I started sharing. First of all, I got clearance, because when you work in corporations, you need to be sure that there's an alignment and that people will support what you want. So I cleared it with my boss in terms of talking to the CEO, saying, hey, I think I have my job under control, because at the end of the day, job 1 is your current job. You got to do your current job. Job 2 is, are they supportive of it? There's no conflict. And so then they partnered with me on it. And then I did what we're doing. I mean, you have to pay to get involved. I mean, I attended Catalyst events. I took different classes. I did everything to make it hard for somebody to say no to me once I was ready to begin pursuing. I talked to people like Donna. I talked to everybody. So again, you just have to keep putting it out into the air, asking about it in a really constructive and positive way. And that's how it happened. And then it also happened, I think Dwight talked about it, we're always being watched. I mean, one of my colleagues on the I'm on the AutoZone board, was talking to somebody on the J.B. Hunt board and said, hey, you know, Gail King would be great for your board. She's really good with this kind of thing. So that's how I got on all my boards. It was one, I knew that I had something to offer. First thing, you have to know you have something to offer. I knew what I had to offer. I knew where I wanted to play. And then I leveraged all of my relationships to help that happen.
And I just would add that I don't know, I was not as strategic as Gail. The opportunity came and I leapt, right? So there's 2 ways to do it, right? You can, if the opportunity comes, and that is, again, through relationships, and if you've got experience as a nonprofit board leader, people will see that. So sometimes I like to say to young people, you got to play up. Right? Like, I didn't know what I was getting into when I went on a public company board, but I'm always willing to learn. Right?
She was the former judge. Yeah, I would want her too on my daggone board. I'm like, oh, shut up. Shut up. I had to do hard work. All right, come on, guys. Who worked the hardest at this thing?
I hate her.
Alex, anything to add?
You know, I think that, you know, the way we make it sound, we're going to make people paranoid. You're always being watched.
You are. You are.
Here's the way I would describe it, and this is my mantra. If you want to move up, if you want to be promoted, do a great job at what you're currently doing. Right. Okay? That's just another way of saying it. That, sure, we are being evaluated. We've all been in these rooms where, without us knowing it, people are looking at us, thinking about opportunities that they may have. But the key for all of us is to do a great job, not just a good job, at what you're currently doing. Yeah. That provides the foundation for moving up.
It is the price of admission. I mean, that is, but making sure, the only other thing I would say, and this is, I'm going to counsel from my job at Nationwide, is making sure that the job you're doing is the job they value. There are many times I hear from people who are saying, you know, I'm doing a great job, but if that's not what they value, if you're not in alignment with what that organization values, then you're not adding value, no matter how good you're doing it. So you need to make sure you have really good alignment and clarity there.
So you talked about how to make yourself stand out. If you look at the S&P 500, only 400 first-time directors were appointed in 2024, and only 10% of them were African American. So the pathway there is getting narrower and narrower. What are some additional ways that we need to make ourselves stand out, and who do we need to connect with? How do we get ourselves seen by the decision makers who are in these boardrooms and on the nom-gov committees?
Well, part of it is to finish what Gail said is what are your skill sets that you're bringing to a board? So if you're somebody like Gail or you're Donna, where you've led corporate divisions, that's going to be very valuable to a company. What is it that you're offering? For me, being a lawyer, having leadership experience, you've got to think of what are you marketing to that corporate board and being in the rooms where those people are. You heard Carrington talk about that before. What are the meetings that you're attending? Who are the network of people that you're associating with? People on corporate boards, if they're going to recommend you, you're going to have a much stronger chance when you're going through the nominating and governance process. So you've got to surround yourself with people who are already in those rooms and start to accentuate those skill sets are going to be valuable to any corporation. They're looking for leadership and judgment.
Right. I want to take you back to your current job. And I want to make sure that in your current job, you're getting everything out of it you possibly can. And if you are not getting what you need in order to continue to grow, then I want to tell you, you need to leave that job and find a company that will help you be your best self and who will believe in you. So it really begins with your current job, and I think Alex talked about that, is making sure that you're visible with the people, and it's the power structure. We don't like to talk about power structure in the African American community, but the power structure is real. Now, we have power structure in our sororities and all of our fraternities and everything, and we're okay with that, but we don't want to accept that in corporate America. So you have to understand, y'all, amen? Yep. Amen. All right. And so I want you to understand the structure and then manage the structure. Who are the people in that system that you need to know? Who are the people, and I know all of us, I don't feel that person, I don't feel that person. Well, you got to feel everybody. You got to understand them. You don't have to love them, but you got to work with them, because when you're on a board, it's all about how do we collaborate together for the good of the board. It's not how do I like you, Yvette, even though I do most days, but it's like, so again, I really want you to start with your current job. That's how you get seen. Yes. And it's beyond just your job. A lot of times we spent a lot of time looking down at what we were doing. You got to look up, you've got to look around, you've got to see who's having lunch and spend time with people you don't want to spend time with. Create those relationships so that people begin to talk about your brand. I tell people all the time, you might not have liked my style, but you were going to respect what I was doing. And that's what you want. And then you want people to believe in you as being value add, because I know we have to be careful with this, but it's not negative. You guys are judging people every time you meet somebody. You're judging them. Today, I met some people and said, oh, they look really good. It's just who we are by nature. So realize that and be planful. The only other thing I want to say about being seen, we talk about intentionality, and we use this word a lot. We want to be intentional. Being intentional is about doing something every day, taking an action every day towards your long-term goal. So it's not just about being intentional for the word of intentional. It's about taking actions so that you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So that to me is what I was trying to do. I looked around and we talked, Don and I would laugh about it. Boy, when they give you a bird's eye view into all of the stuff that you could have in these corporations, you'll be like, yeah, I can do that. And that's what we want you to do, is to believe that you can do it, and then to demand that you have it in a way that they can hear you. In a way they can hear you. And that means in a kind way, but in a still, let's talk about how do I continue to grow.
What we need is opportunity. Everyone in this room is talented. Everyone in this room has a skill set and a value add that can benefit corporations, but you need opportunity. And that's where I go back to these nonprofit boards as an opportunity for you to demonstrate your skills, your abilities, your value add. Because that's really the key, is to have folks see you in action. Because everyone in this room is talented. You wouldn't be in this room if you didn't have talent. But what you need is for people to see you in action. And with each one of us, I would bet that it was the performance with nonprofits, understanding what boards do, understanding the role of a board. But being on a nonprofit where they see you in action, that's how I got my first board. Doing the work, being on time, being prepared. You know, I tell the story. I was very fortunate to be on the board at Ohio State University. And when I was appointed, I got to sit next to Les Wexner. I never would have had that opportunity without being on that nonprofit board and making sure I was prepared. Every meeting, I read the material, was ready to go, and they watch you, see you in action, but we all need opportunities. Get on some nonprofits, be involved with organizations like the African American Leadership Academy and other organizations, and be prepared, because truly it is, all of us need some luck, okay? You can be skilled, talented, qualified, but you need an opportunity. You need luck. What is luck? When preparation meets opportunity.
I do want to just say amen to him about the non-for-profit. Those are really very helpful. The only thing I would advise you to do when you join a not-for-profit is don't join the membership committee. Get on the audit committee. Get on something that transfer to a real board. Get on the governance. Do the stuff that really prepares you that will transfer later.
And so just by a quick show of hands, how many of you are on nonprofit boards today? Because we've heard a lot on, wow. That's fantastic. Well, so we talked about your journey to the boardroom, how you got your first seat. What was the interview process like? And how is that different than interviewing for a management role? And how did you prepare for it?
I don't know that, I mean, I learned about the company first, right? So I've been on several boards now, because when I went back to the judiciary, I had to get off my public company boards, and then I got on different ones when I left the Supreme Court. But I think one of the things you have to do is know the business of the company. So I spent some time understanding what the company does, who the other board members are, so that I could answer questions about why do I want to be on that board, right? And I'm going to tell you, sometimes I had somebody recently, a headhunter, reach out to me about being on a board, that when I looked at the information, I was like, oh my God, it was a for-profit prison company. And I was like, I called her back immediately and said, there is no way I want to be on the board of a for-profit. I said, what is your ROI? It's creating
You know, they called me on that job too. I was like, heck no.
Right. I was like,
But I sent them to both of you.
But you got to be clear on the company who it is to make sure it's something you want to do. I mean, I would not be able to look at myself in the mirror if I got up every morning thinking about how do I maximize profit on the back of my people. So make sure it's a company, you learn about the company, make sure you understand what the company does. It's something you want to be a part of. How is the company doing? How are they performing? You know, you just got to educate yourself so that you can answer questions. And there have been, the most recent board I've joined, I said to the headhunter, I'm not the right person because it's an investment company. I'm not a CPA. I don't know anything about investment. I suggest you move on to somebody else. And he said to me, no, you're exactly who we're looking for. We've got the investment professionals. We're looking for somebody who has judgment and has connections in this community. That's what we're looking for. And so through about 6 conversations, I ultimately decided to join. But you've got to do your homework. You can't just show up and wing it.
The only thing I would say is it's very similar. The major difference that I noticed is that they are really looking at what will be the fit. You know, because again, they assume at this level they've got my bio, they've done their research, so they know I bring a certain level of skill. They are also interested in your brand and what you're bringing. But they are really, because it's a small group of people who are really helping to drive the stakeholder and shareholder value. So they want to make sure that they're adding because one person can destroy anything. You get the wrong mix and it's bad. And so what I found was that they were really looking to see, is this a person who knows how to partner, who knows how to have feedback, but do it in a way that's constructive, recognize that the role of a board is that it's not my decision, it's a collective decision. Our goal is to give input, to challenge where appropriate, but then be able to get behind the decision. So again, most of the interview was really around, was the fit? And I'll be candid, when you, at a certain point in your life and where I'm at in my life, I'm not doing anything that I don't feel that it's a good fit for me either. So they're interviewing me for fit and I'm interviewing them for fit. So it worked out well.
Right.
Well, the hardest part is the first board, because once you get on that first board, you're in the club, right? You're in the club, and there's an assumption, a positive assumption, that you understand what a board does, that you understand value add, and that you are the type of person that understands the dynamics of a boardroom. But it's that first board, and I encourage all of you just to have confidence in yourself. A lot of times we select out because we think we're not ready. But if they're approaching you, it's because they see something in you that you can add value to that board. My experience, I became a chair of a technology company. I'm the most non-technological person you ever want to meet. But they were looking for someone who understood corporate governance. We do things in our daily jobs that we underestimate the value. I worked on a project with McKinsey on corporate governance. Guess what? On my business resume, because I have two, I have a practice resume, but I have a business resume. And on that business resume, it talks about that experience with corporate governance that becomes a value add that they appreciate and they want, that you may not be aware that you're doing something and experiencing something that's going to add value. So don't underestimate and be open, but there are a number of skill sets, abilities, experiences that boards need, including diversity of thought. That is key, because businesses want to make money, right? And we need to start leveraging our awareness of consumers, business operations, as well as profitability.
We mentioned the importance of fit being on a board. Are there some other reasons, of course, the mission of the organization is another one. Are there some other reasons why people should think and pause before joining boards that we should talk about?
Well, fit is important, but again, I think everything should be around your values. And she talked about, the fact that, and this is true, that there are these companies that have privatized prisons, and they're looking for members, directors, and of course they would love to have black members, but, that's a no-go for us. I mean, I don't smoke. I mean, and, Russell Reynolds, different people, other people may have different views of that. But, for me, I make decisions around my personal values and around my interests also of where I thought I could add the most value, So, I'm very much into culture. I'm very much into feeling that it's a company that cares about people. If, in fact, I feel like that the output is more important than how you do it, that doesn't work for me. So to me, it's more the values.
Yeah, I agree totally with the values. In addition, and I guess it's the lawyer in me, it's liability.
Yeah.
Right? I was approached about being on a mining company board. When I looked them up and saw that there were lawsuits, not just against the company, but the board members, no way. Even though I wanted that income, I definitely wanted that income. But when you look at liability, you need to look at companies, their financial strength, look at the people, the people that are running the company. Do they have the kind of skill and ability to be part of a successful company? There's nothing worse than being on a board that's constantly in trouble, constantly dealing with financial issues, constantly dealing with human resources issue. So in doing your homework, look at the liability equation as well.
I do want to make, and I know Yvette was going to add, the other thing, and you may get to this, we talked a little bit about what you should do with not-for-profits, but make sure all of you understand a P&L. I mean, if you don't understand a P&L, then, take every class you can, look at it every week you can. I mean, because the P&L will tell you everything that's going on in a company. And you need to be well-versed in being able to read it and know what's going on in companies, to your point, especially when you're being interviewed for a board, making sure they don't have any hidden things that you will ultimately deal with.
And make sure you have the time for the board, because it is work. I mean, it's 4 meetings a year, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but there's a lot of preparation that goes into each of those board meetings. And to Alex's point, you've got to read the materials. You can't just show up having skinned them and think that you're going to be caught up on what's going on at the board level. You can only add value if you are prepared and if you know the strategic questions to ask when you're in the board meeting. The one thing Donna, the advice she gave me from my first board, and I kind of hate her for it now, was to not do governance, to do the audit committee. She said, you don't need to do governance because you need to do something that adds value. Audit is where it's the most damn work. And so, yes, it's the most important thing, but it has the most risk. And so you have to really be prepared. You know, I'm the chair of the audit committee on one board and vice chair on the other. And so I spend a lot of hours outside of the board meeting preparing. So I know Donna, yeah. So, but it's also to your point of getting your next board. When you have that on your resume, if you're not a CPA, but you're a lawyer or an executive, they like knowing that you have audit committee experience. It's a value that you use to get the next board that you're on. So you have to make sure you have the time that in your personal life you can devote the time for the board.
And so you all mentioned the importance of doing research on the company. For public companies, it's very easy to find information, 10K, 10Q, proxy statements, whatever. There's a whole bunch of information out there. How might you go about learning more about private company boards in the state of a specific private company?
I mean, for me, whenever I've been contacted about a board, I'm asking them to provide me with as much information as they possibly can about it. And if they can't provide me with the financial statement, with the history, if they can't give me access, then they don't want me on a board. So again, you ask for it.
And I think in today's world, there's so much information. It's really a matter of using the technology to find out about that private entity. Look at the people again. Do your searches on the people that are part of that company. But I do think that effectively using technology to get behind the company name, to see who the people are and what they've been doing, it's out there. You just need to take your time. And again, it's worth it. The investment is worth it, but do your homework.
And you've got to make sure the company that you're looking at doesn't conflict with who you work for, your everyday job. So for people like me and Alex, we always have to make sure that it's not a conflict with our clients, right? So I have to always run it through our client conflict database to make sure that I can ethically accept any kind of appointment. You'll need to do that with your CEOs. 1, to make sure they'll allow you to serve on a company board, and to 2, make sure that it doesn't conflict with either the business of your company or potential positions of your company.
And so Donna has a statement that she likes to share, each one to teach one, I believe. And Donna is a living legacy of a person who has opened the doors for so many people who look like us to get into the boardroom. Each one of you has done the same thing. What are you most proud of in terms of how you've opened the doors for African Americans to get a seat in the boardroom?
Well, that's why I like chairing Nom and Gov, Nominations and Governance, because that's the committee that does the spec in terms of the qualifications they're looking at, and that's the committee that does the initial interviewing and vetting before it comes before the full board. So when I'm on a board, I hate audit. I mean, I just I hate audit. I'm not financial, but I love Nom and Gov, and part of it is that's the portal to the companies. And so in writing the spec and talking about the qualifications we need, talking about the experiences that we need, I think that that's what I've enjoyed the most, being a part of the committee that actually opens the door for admission.
And I am naturally on the Comp and Gov, compensation committees. I'm on governance as well. But what I love about that is that I get to ask questions about why I don't see black people presenting during the presentations. And then suddenly we see them coming in. I get to ask questions in a really loving way about about the compensation and, you know, is that compensation equitable with everyone? And I get to thank them for doing such a great job of recognizing all the talent in the company, because when you recognize people for doing great work, they do more work. So I get to do what I love to do, and that is to ensure that if I'm going to spend time somewhere, when I walk away from wherever it is, that I will see more black people there. And so I use that through that filter.
And so,
It's important if you have a seat at the table that you're using your voice and making an impact. What are some other ways, and how do you show up in the boardroom as an African American and ask those type of questions?
well, and that's what I was going to say. I mean, literally, we had a situation at one of my companies about 5 or 6 years ago. We were adding a new board member. We had hired a search consultant, and diversity was one of the key lists for who we wanted to have as a board member. And the 3 candidates they put forward were 2 white women, one who had a conflict, one who was not qualified, and a white man. And so when we interviewed all of them as the executive committee, I raised hell. And I said, we said diversity, and you presented 3 people, one who had a conflict because she was in the same business as us for her paid job, the second who wasn't qualified, so the only qualified person is the white male. I am offended by, I went off. And so the chair of the Nom and Gov committee called me and he said, well, we can start the search over. We didn't realize. I'm like, how did you not realize? We said, I was the only black person on the board. We knew we needed diversity. And so that's how I raised my voice in that situation. And so we now have 3 black people on the board because you have to be willing to speak up. That was a bullshit, excuse me. That search had the appearance of diversity, but it wasn't real diversity. And the second thing, like Gail said, when our CEO brought forward a succession plan about 10 years ago, the CHRO, the Chief Human Resource Officer, put all these pictures on the screen about this was a succession planning for each of the EVPs, and they were all white men. And I said to the CEO, I said, if this is our succession plan, that means 10 years from now, our company looks exactly the way that it does today. And so from that, we sent the CHRO back. And so now we have women and people of color who are in the chain of succession in an intentional way. We challenged each EVP and the CEO to have at least 3 direct reports, 2 of whom are diverse, who if they got hit by a bus tomorrow could succeed them. And so that way we have a pipeline.
So what we're saying is, and what we want to encourage you to do is, even in your spaces today, is that you still have influence and you still have the ability, and you should be looking and asking that question in your own jobs. You know, what are we doing? What does it look like? You know, not only for minorities, because we have to play the game they play, and that is for everybody, you know, and so that's how we do it. Every day we ask questions. We ask questions about things that are important to us on these boards.
And as we've talked about before, it's going to become even more important as we look forward. And so the key, too, is both with Yvette and Gail, they do a great job on their boards so that when they speak up, there's a response. And make no mistake about it, at the end of the day, they want to know that you're contributing to the profitability. And it's when you're contributing and adding value to the profits of that company, they're going to listen to you about other people that should also be in the room that can add to profitability. Your credibility helps with that.
Yeah.
But we all have to start speaking up even more now than before.
That's right. That's right.
We started off the conversation asking why it's important, why this subject is important to this group. There's a perfect example right there. If we're not in the room, the questions don't get asked.
That's right.
So one last question before we open it up to the audience. Now that you're on the other side and you've been in the boardroom, multiple boards, are there things that you would have done differently in your career, any different career decisions or moves that you would have made that you think would have positioned you better for these opportunities or achieve opportunities earlier in your career for boards? Any decisions or things you would have done differently?
I would have focused personally more on business and finance. You know, I come from the human resources side, the corporate governance side, but when you're looking, and I think you sent us an article, they were talking about the experiences, qualifications that are most sought after for board members. And in addition to being a CEO, it's the financial acumen. And so that's what I would have done differently. We're talking about, you know, preparation, reading, getting in the game, do everything you can to truly understand finances so that you can be considered a financial expert, which is a key qualification these days to getting on a board.
I probably wouldn't have spent so much time in public service because you can't be on a corporate board when you're an elected official. And so if I'd known how much money was on this side, I'd have got out sooner.
Good answer.
You are too crazy. That's hard to follow. You know, I would have looked, you know, I mentioned this earlier that I want you all to look up and around. I think I would have looked up and around sooner. I was much later in my career. I was so dedicated to Nationwide. I was such a workaholic that everything was so tied to just Nationwide. And that's good. But what I want you to do, and I counsel now, is to make sure you're looking up within your organization, but that you have lots of tentacles outside of your organization so that you are not tied to any one thing, because one thing can destroy you, you know. And so if I had done it over again, I was fortunate that it worked for me. But later in life, I learned to just make sure that Nationwide, that was my company, was not the only thing. And when I did that, when I made that pivot, it changed everything for me. It gave me more power within Nationwide, and it gave me more power external to Nationwide. So make sure you have a portfolio that's extremely balanced, that you're doing whatever company you're doing really well, but that you have other things that you're doing equally as well so that you can lean into that when you need it.
Can I just add to that briefly? And I know Audra talks about this, is what is your brand? And even no matter where you are in your career right now, if you're middle management, higher, just starting out, what is your brand? And Alex talked about that you do what you say, that your work is excellent, that when people see you, they see a leader. You've got to always, how do you want people to judge you when you walk in the room? And somebody said earlier, we all make decisions. When you walk in, what is it you want people to think about you? And how are you executing on that brand?
Yeah, absolutely.
So one closing stat I'd like to share, and again, this is a shout out to Donna James and the legacy her and Larry had with respect to this program. Of the new directors, and this is Spencer Stewart's 2024 study on S&P 500 new directors. It is an excellent read. Google it, grab it. It's an excellent read. It will tell you what boards have been looking for, what the diversity stats look like. But of new directors who self-identify as underrepresented minorities, 29% of new Asians are active CEOs, 13% of new directors are Hispanic or Latinx directors are active CEOs, and 0% for Black or African American, 0%. So what this organization does to get more of us in the C-suite and in the CEO role and the executive ranks is mission critical to helping us getting our foot inside the boardroom. With that, I think we do have some time for questions. Any questions? Who's doing the?
While you all the mic is going to that, could you all do me a favor and give Barb a great big round of applause for doing a fabulous job? Thank you, Barb.
So if you, there we go.
Hello, my name is Irvin Rogers. I went through Elite Eight. All right, there we go. I know we got some representation in here. So I sat here and I started drawing on my Remarkable 2 and the journey. It's all started with a conversation after getting into African American Leadership Academy. For those that were fortunate to have Donna as the executive director, you got a chance to go to dinner with her. And so my dinner was a little different. My wife said, "Boy, what are you doing?" And I said, "I'm taking my performance reviews." So I took 6 years worth of performance reviews to dinner. And she said, "We're supposed to eat and get to know each other, but I see you came to work." So she gave me some good advice. She knew what I wanted to do. She knew I wanted to be a CIO. And I made it known to my Elite 8 group that I want to be a CIO. And everybody that I talked to, I want to be a CIO. And I just kept saying it over and over and over. Well, she sent me to Dwight. And so I started talking to Dwight. Dwight gave me some homework, and I followed back up with him, and I said, "I did that." He said, "Okay, well, here's some more." And he said, sometimes it's an uncommon pathway to get to where you're trying to get to. So I'm going to skip over that one, and then I'm going to go to Dwight introduced me probably earlier this year to Barb. First time meeting her, and I went to write it down because I wanted to get it right. Went to the Weld African American Directors Forum, and it was an all-day forum. It opened my eyes up to the art of the impossibility. So it kept trying to, as Audrey would say, re-engineer the outcome that I wanted. And what I learned was that there's multiple ways to get there. So through AALA, a connection, I don't want to put them on blast, but I got to give the brother credit. I got a call about a board position that's not on the books. So Matt, I hope you don't mind me saying your name, but Matt Orr made the introduction because Dwight made the introduction to me because Dwight knew that I was a CIO. I had been a CIO for the last 12 years, state CIO in government, and then I went on to become a CIO in private, in retail. And so all these things are culminating together. This is my third time up to bat. I just recently had lunch with the executive director. So the art of possibility is possible. When I started reviewing some of these numbers with Donna, all I could hear was cartwheels on the other side. And I'm like, screaming and yelling. I'm like, is that a good thing? And she said, absolutely. And so the one thing that I'm starting to do on my own is I created a business. It's called Visionary Resource Group. I am the Chief Visionary Officer. Yes, I gave myself that title, and the CIO. But what I'm doing is I'm hosting dinners for things that I would normally, the value, Alex, that you talked about, that I would normally just go and show up and be popularity and bring a bunch of people to the table. Well, I'm getting paid for that this month. So it's very interesting. What other advice would you give for non-traditional ways to open up doors, whether it be through private equity, whether it be through a vendor that's getting ready to go public? What advice would you give to us?
Well, I think we should just have you on the panel because your map is fabulous. Right. You're doing we're sitting over here like, damn. Right. Let's give him a round of applause for getting it right. You talked about everything we've talked about, and that is getting in the way, the connections, speaking it into existence, letting the world know what you're interested in, connecting with people. I wish we had, I don't have anything else.
I think you're, and what you developed a talent that we didn't even talk about. A lot of boards are looking for CIOs. Yes. Because that is your biggest risk as a company, is your tech system being hacked. Right. And so you brought up a skill set we hadn't even talked about. Irvin, that's excellent. I think you are doing all the things. And if you haven't landed that corporate board yet, you will, because you're going to be in demand. And a black CIO, yeah.
And always so pleasant. Every time I encounter you, it's just a wonderful experience. So I don't think there's anything else we can tell you. I'm sorry. Darn it. Yeah. Darn it. Darn it.
Number one is finance and financial skills. Number two is CIO, cyber, AI, et cetera. Number one, and they're close.
Yeah. Can I I wanted to make one point because you made me think about this. And one of the things that we've been talking about with the CEO Collective is, as black folks, we have to own our future.
Yes.
And so the challenge from my perspective is for black businesses to create boards, to provide opportunities to folks in this room so that when you go to interview, you can say, yes, I've been on the advisory board of X business, Y business. So my challenge to this group, all of us, think about, can we create boards, advisory boards, have Donna do the training, but seriously, so that we have experience, that we create these opportunities. We've got to be much more creative about how we do things. And I was thinking about what you were saying. There are business owners here, create advisory boards, opportunity, free dinner, don't have to pay all the time. But that's something we need to think about.
I'm sorry, but I have to add this because this is probably on a different topic. But when you talked about the advisory board, the one thing, because you all have this community here, that I would encourage you to do is to really lift each other up in your environments. You make those organizations respect one another. And when they see, and Donna will tell you that everyone knew that I respected Donna. There was nothing you could ever say about Donna to me. And that is what I want y'all to do with everybody in your organization, because then you say to the people in power that these people I respect. So I just had to really encourage you to do that for one another.
Hi, Anton Johnson, class of 23. Thank you so much for representing. We kind of have a cute thing. It's ballin'. Jordan, the Jordan class. So thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon. I really appreciate it and was hanging on every word. I was today years old when I found out that corporate board members were compensated. I don't know about anybody else in the room. I thought everybody was doing this out of the goodness of their heart. Could you give us specifics on how board compensation works? What does that look like?
I can give you some average data. So BDO does an annual survey. You can actually Google it. They do a survey of the 600 mid-cap companies. And the average compensation, I think, for 2023 was about a couple $100,000 a year for the mid-600 cap. And that was comprised of board fees, committee fees, and a portion of equity. And it differs, the percentage of equity may differ based upon the sector that you're in, whether it's health, tech, or whatever. So it's about $200,000 for the small guys. That's not even getting to the big guys. I mentioned earlier what NVIDIA board members make. Does that resonate with you?
That's about right. It's around 300,000 or more. So.
And the value is in the stock, too.
stock.
The value's in the stock. You let that stock sit there.
It depends on the profitability of the company. When you get started, it's not the 200,000. It's more in the 100,000 combination of.
Which company are you talking about?
I'm on the board. I'm on the board of Adelphi Bank.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and I'm just saying that there are companies out there where it's not that
Size.
200,000. Now,
size.
Smucker, yes, right, but that's a $20 billion entity, so it's all driven by the profitability of the company, but it is compensated.
It's at least six figures.
Lisanne Green, class double deuce. We got the juice. Anyhow, my question is on the headhunters. Both the Justice and Ms. King talked about being contacted by recruiters. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Again, it's really about what brand have you developed currently. And, I would encourage all of you to also speak, participate in different programs. If people invite you to be a thought leader so that people can see you. There are people who will say, oh, I saw this young lady who was speaking about so-and-so and think she would be value add. So that's how your name get out. It's your brand, which is what gets your name out. But you can also contact different recruiters and, let them know that you have an interest. But it's always easier to have it where they have an interest in you because they have heard about you, they've seen your work, they know of you.
Make sure your LinkedIn profile identifies skills. So go back through your LinkedIn profile and make sure that the first things they see about you are strategist, CPA, board member, those kind of things that when these companies are doing searches, a lot of them start on LinkedIn. And so make sure your profile is up to date and that you have those keywords in your profile that would be interesting to a corporate headhunter.
And they mentioned several of them today, like qualified financial expert. If you're a board chair, committee chair, make sure you put that on there as well. Committee leadership is also important. They gave you a lot of the buzzwords today.
Yes. That's where it starts. Somebody in the back? Yep.
Last question.
Good afternoon. My comment is more, well, it's more of a comment more than a question or whatever. You guys, I'm class 4, so I'm old. You may not understand this resource, but we have these folks here like Janet, great to see you, Donna. You guys, over the years, I'm going back 20 years or so, we've called them the fairy godmothers. They have mentored us. Well, I said in the session earlier when I was speaking or whatever, my wife, I told her I want to start my company. She said, you got 2 years, we have babies. I called Donna, I called Yvette, and I had to run my business plan by them and their own boards. With that being said, thank you so much for your contributions and such, whatever. Gail, you know how I love you and stalk you. Anthony and Alex, always for being a luminary in our community, whatever.
I love you too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But guys, we model behavior. If we're on nonprofits boards and such or whatever, we can model this behavior and start there. I've seen this happen with my sister. I've seen this happen with other folks, whatever, where they get that call. And you may or may not be ready. I've seen my sister, a couple of the folks, there was a conflict or such or whatever, and they took the time to refer someone else. Yes. That other person made it, is on the board, and they're one of our contemporaries. So at the end of the day, it is very much possible. One of the folks that we all know or maybe don't know is Kim Blackwell. Kim is phenomenal. She's one of our peers or whatever, and she continues to just soar. So with that being said, this is more of a comment. Thank you so much for, and Yvette, with the public service coming, you're right, because I know how much you lost with history and then coming back to whatever, you know. So thank you guys for your contributions. It's really, really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we have time for closing comments for each of the panelists. And let's start with Yvette. Want to go ahead and closing comments?
Sure. Thank you guys for being here. I wish I'd had this when I was starting out. I had Janet Jackson as my advisor she used to kick my butt, but then give me opportunities and push me forward. So I think that it can't be underestimated, the value of being in this room and what you're learning. And just, if the last thing you hear from me is, know your brand. Make sure your brand is how you show up every day. It's about integrity, confidence, skill. Keep focused on that at all times.
Again, I would just remind you to know your value and to just get in the way and demand and that whatever it is you're dreaming of, that you can achieve it. So know your value.
Again, great to be here. My closing comment would be develop your own mix. One of the things that happens is we get so much advice, so many great suggestions, but the key becomes how do we process that using our core in terms of who we are, taking bits and pieces, but the key is to develop your mix. We're all different. But the thing is, we have taken that advice, said, like, I'm an introvert, right? But you take that advice, you take those comments, and develop your brand. No, it's true, I am. I've learned how to do this because I had to. But the point is, seriously, develop your mix, okay? What works for you, what's natural for you, and go forward and do good.
So guys, he is an introvert, and so we were not laughing at that. But y'all have to help me with one thing I always have to do with Yvette McGee Brown, right? So do you all know Don't say a word. But you all know babies. You know how you see little babies and you see them in strollers, and then there are some babies like, like Alex, who would just sort of look at you like, oh, somebody else looking at me, right? And then there's the Yvette McGee Brown baby that be, oh, here I am, pick me up, come get me. And that's how she approaches the whole world. So whenever I see her, I always feel this wonderful energy coming at me. So she is clearly not an introvert.
On that note, please help me in thanking these amazing panelists.
I know.
Thank you all.